Fantasy Rap
with Austin and Ozzy.
Oh, I just love those boys.
Hey everyone, this is Fantasy Rap, and I'm your host Ozzy.
And I'm your co-host Austin.
You can find us on fantasyrap.com. That is fantasywrap.com. Hey everybody, welcome to our first podcast of the 2024 season. We're going to kind of talk about the Super Bowl a little bit.
Yeah.
It's been a while, but we're also going to go over some of the free agent acquisitions, the trades, the player movement that probably has the most impact on some of the offenses.
Mm-hmm.
So without further ado, I'm going to let Austin do most of the talking, and I'll add in my 2 cents worth.
Sounds good. You want to start with the Super Bowl, or?
Yeah, let's start with the Super Bowl. You said you didn't see a whole lot of it. It was a good game.
Mm-hmm.
I was not surprised at all that Kansas City won again. I'm getting tired of Kansas City. And nothing against, what they've got going is working really well. I mean, they've got one of the premier coaches.
Yeah.
They've got one of the premier quarterbacks. He's now getting paid more like a premier quarterback, so he's taking up a little bit more of the money.
Yep.
They're unable to keep certain guys, like they lost L'Jarius Sneed from their defense, which I think he was a pretty important piece.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how, and they had a good next man up. I mean, it's not like they don't have capable players. It's just that sometimes as those, and we've seen it in Green Bay before, and you've seen it in many places. You win a Super Bowl, and your guys are, the free agents are seen as stars somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, you can't afford to pay them.
Yeah.
And when a team like the Bears have $85 million to spend, or whatever it is, or Washington, or they can overpay some of those guys to do something that you can't, you're going to lose from your team.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see that coming on more for Kansas City as the expenses start rising on quarterback play.
Yep.
And at some point in time, Travis Kelce is going to retire.
I was just going to say that the age is going to come into play for a couple of those guys, namely, Travis Kelce.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, was it in the Super Bowl that was it Greenlaw that snapped his Achilles popped right on the sideline there? I think it was during the game that for the Niners.
Could have been.
Yeah, that game started out pretty defensive. If I remember from what
I think you're right.
And then it seemed like, I think it was Greenlaw was just jogging off the sideline, and his Achilles popped, and then it just kind of changed after that. Obviously he's kind of the focal point, one of the focal points of their defense, and you lose that. Kind of hard to come back from losing a piece like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I guess we'll jump into some free agency. Pretty crazy overall. There were some moves that don't really affect fantasy, obviously. Big one that comes to mind is Houston adding to their defense again with Danielle Hunter,
right?
Who to me feels like he's been in the league like 15 years. I don't know why. He just seems like he's been around a long time, but the dude's still just crazy good.
And it's interesting because we don't talk about defense, but defense can
impact
fantasy.
Yeah.
Not from a he's going to stop more players and blah blah blah. It could mean that they don't have to rely as much on their offense.
Yeah.
And therefore, the numbers that we saw out of Stroud and all the other guys and the new guys that are coming in, et cetera, you may not see them score as much because they don't need to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
or the defense is so good it's 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out,
And they get the ball
and your
more.
running back gets 40 carries in a game.
Exactly.
So
Or
Yeah.
like early on with Miami when they were winning 70 to whatever,
oh,
it meant that other players,
mhm,
you know, an H-An
mhm.
was getting more attempts or more carries than he would normally see had it been a closer game early in the season.
yeah,
Or some of the other teams that, you know, I'm trying to, you know, last year, 2 years ago with the Eagles,
oh yeah,
when we complained because they'd always run out,
Yeah.
you know, jump out to this huge
at
lead,
halftime and then come out and
and they didn't have to score.
Mhm.
So it's hard to say what impact a defense can potentially have on your offense.
Yep, yeah.
So and it's nothing that we ever talk about,
Yeah,
but we probably should.
yeah. And then obviously too, if you're in an IDP league,
Oh, yeah,
defense matters then. But that's not just the team D overall. It's, you know, you're looking at the individual players. So,
Right.
I mean, for me, you know, like quarterbacks, I think one of the big ones, if not the biggest one, was Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
You know, bailing on Minnesota, maybe seen. I mean, you still have Jefferson, and they bring in Aaron Jones, but to me,
And they
feels
still
like
have who's the rookie from last year?
Ty Chandler, running back.
No.
Oh, Jordan Addison.
Jordan Addison.
But
And they
there's-
still got
there's-
Hawk.
I know, but to me, there's like a weird. I don't know what it is, because once you lay it out and look at it, you're like, okay, that's not terrible. That's a good core of offensive pieces.
If they get a quarterback.
Yes, and that's the thing is, you know, I got on my list Sam Darnold. They brought him in, but you know, from everything I've been hearing, Minnesota's going to probably aggressively try and move up the draft board.
JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, or JJ McCarthy, who I just saw did not get invited to attend the draft.
Okay.
That was a true post that I saw. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know that the move for Cousins is necessary for himself
Yeah.
is necessarily a plus move. I think that his actually is worse, a little bit worse for him, but it makes every other position player, I mean, the running backs, the wide receivers, the tight ends, all are going to have a huge uptick.
Yeah. So Atlanta, who for the life of me, I can't remember who's in that division with them.
Are they in with Tampa Bay and
Is it Carolina in there?
Tampa Bay? Yeah.
So maybe, I mean, you look at the NFC North, everybody like last year was like, oh, it's the Lions and nobody else right now, because Love was fairly unproven.
Yeah.
The Bears were the Bears, and, you know, Minnesota, you know, seemed like they were alternating years where they would lose by a touchdown or they would win by, you know, by one score games, you know, or something like that. So
yeah, they were 11-0 2 years ago, and then started out like 0-5.
Yeah, so
one score games.
You know, for me, the Cousins thing, you know, roster wise, maybe a little bit down with Atlanta. I think though you get, you know, Bijan, who's the greatest, you know, collegiate prospect since Adrian Peterson, is what, you know, they were saying about him. But I mean, Drake London I think he's good. It's just you know, like everybody on that team was suffering from the coach in Arthur Smith and the quarterback play. So, you know, like I said, for me, I think it's just, I think Drake London, if you want him this year, obviously in Dynasty, I think he's maybe not untouchable, but I think a lot of guys that have him have been waiting this long are going to be like, finally, thank you, and they're going to do what they can to hold on to him.
Well, him and Pitts.
Well, Pitts.
I mean, I've been holding on to
the
Pitts.
Suffering for Pitts has been worse.
Right.
If you still have him, I know a lot of people just.
Well, and I had people who were
took him
trying to get me to trade him, and you know, my thought was I'm going to hold him for another year because as soon as he becomes a free agent, watch out. Well, instead. Now, I believe this is his contract year, and he gets Kirk Cousins playing with him.
And you look at, I mean, you could argue athleticism-wise, Pitts is just as good, if not better, than T.J. Hawkinson.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so and we know how well Hawkinson was doing with Cousins.
Right,
So,
right.
Same
could be
same with
huge.
London, probably going to see the same amount, if not, fairly similar to what, JJ was seeing in
Right.
Minnesota. So
Right.
I think Drake London, and in redraft leagues, I think he's going to be creeping up a lot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think by the time you're doing drafts, normally in like your, August kind of time, or if you wait like the week before the season, which, is kind of the smart thing to do if you can make it work with the rest of your league. But I
top 10.
Yeah,
potentially.
I think so. I think he'll go, if you could get London in the third this year, I think he might be lucky. End of the third. I think he'd be lucky to get
I think depending upon depending upon how many teams, but I don't even think he'll last that long.
Yeah,
depending. It just depends on what you're talking about. Because if he's a top 10 wide receiver,
he could get the Garrett Wilson treatment, where Garrett Wilson was going end of the first, early second as well. Because granted,
I see
Rodgers,
him.
But
I see
London.
him.
You look at I know Diggs, even though he's going to Houston, is going to fall out of that top round.
Right.
Right at the turn kind of pick where he's been for the last 2 seasons. Devontae is going to fall out. They got Gardner coming in to be maybe a 1-year gap. Who knows? Obviously he's not immune to getting benched for poor play. Obviously the Raiders are going to be looking to probably
potentially,
find themselves something in the draft. So you got a couple guys potentially moving out, and I think London's going to be that top guy coming in because of the Cousins trade. That he's going to get a huge boost in draft capital for fantasy.
Yeah, you look at we'll get to another player later.
Yeah, and then I think with Cousins coming in to help him a little bit and London, I think whether it be finding a vet, older vet to come in, or if they because they're fairly solid. Probably a little O-line help. Their defense wasn't terrible last year, I didn't think. So, they might, and I think this draft is going to be crazy. I think there's going to be a lot of trades and a lot of teams going,
very well could be.
We like this guy. We could probably wait, we'll move back, or teams going up. I got to get this guy. There's, obviously there's the 1 and 2 generational talents in the draft, and Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr., and then after that, you got Neighbors and Odunze, and you got some guys that are
Brock
half
Bowers.
a tier right behind, Brock Bowers, correct? Yeah, for, that
right
next big up, tight end. So, yeah, but Cousins to Atlanta, fantasy wise, I think he'll be, obviously you lose Justin Jefferson, who, is arguably, top 2, 3.
And you lose Hawkinson. You have to hope that London and Pitts can perform somewhat similar to those two.
Yeah, and I think too, like I have in here, I think Bijan gets, obviously with Arthur Smith gone,
right.
Hopefully the new coach is going to go, well, we drafted this guy at number 5 overall.
Was it that high?
I think I thought it was
10, but
maybe, but a lot, again, one of the greatest collegiate prospects, and they
give him a chance.
They put him in a committee and didn't really use him that well in the receiving game. Bijan's a really good receiving back too.
Right.
And you go back to the days of prime healthy Dalvin Cook. I think Bijan could be in line for a lot of receiving work this year. So yeah. So we'll move on. I got Baker Mayfield. I think smart move for him and the team.
Yeah.
Staying in Tampa.
I don't. Yeah. That would have been a major fail if they would have let him go.
Yeah, I agree. Because, Evans stayed. And I think the only way Mike Evans would have stayed is if he knew that Baker was going to be sticking around at least for another year.
Right.
And they, obviously, Evans had that, had a really nice season this year.
He did.
Great. I was, before the draft last year, was saying Evans was my top value pick, because I think I got him in the 6th or 7th round.
Wow.
Yeah, in a full PPR redraft too. So yeah, yeah. Godwin, kind of had a down year. He was down from what he normally is, which is like a 12 fantasy point, even PPR, like 12, 15 fantasy point kind of guy, down a little bit from there. I think he just stays where he's at.
Yeah.
And then Rachaad White, who, came out, everybody was worried about the workload that he was going to have coming into this last year, and then ended up being the dude. I mean, he was the guy for them, had so many opportunities, and he's a good receiving back as well. So I think he he retains he's going to be locked into that number one role for Tampa as well.
Right. Yep.
So I don't know if you want to talk about their.
Nope. You're good.
All right. Russell Wilson. Pittsburgh. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, we saw the struggles with Nathaniel Hackett two seasons ago now. Obviously Sean Payton being better head coach. I think Hackett's just one of those guys that's a OC, not a coach.
Well, yeah, but I don't even think that. I mean, even with new coaching, he didn't play well.
No, I mean, the only thing is that Cortland Sutton had a ridiculous amount of touchdowns last season, and that was kind of George Pickens' thing last year. Big touchdowns. So I think Pickens gets even more of an upgrade. I have him in. I just hope that he gets away from that attitude that he was showing. Yeah, I mean, we had talked about it a couple times.
Unwilling to continue plays when guy fumbles.
Downfield, So hopefully yes, but I mean, in the notes here, Deontay Johnson's now in Carolina.
Right.
Pickens is the guy.
He's the guy.
Yeah, they brought in Van Jefferson. They still have Calvin Austin III, who was kind of a sleeper pick last year for fantasy because he's super fast, but it didn't amount to anything.
Right.
So I think Pickens for Pittsburgh is their number one. And then if I had to guess, it would be Freiermuth is there too.
Yeah. I've been hearing rumors that
talking about
Pittsburgh is very interested in Brandon Ayuk.
Which I think would,
it would piss off George Pickens.
Well, yes, and I think people are, for the most part, kind of, I wouldn't say controversial, but he's kind of a split in a lot of people's opinions, where he's a good receiver and he has his games and stuff, but as over his career, just in general, has felt like maybe a bit of a letdown. To some degree. So
you're saying Pickens?
No, I'm saying Ayuk.
Oh,
but
see, and I look at Ayuk. I look at Ayuk and I say San Francisco would be best to keep him. And when the two contracts, his and Debo's, come up, I believe it's at the end of the year. Probably let Debo walk.
Yeah,
because while Debo can do some interesting things, I think that your better receiver is definitely Ayuk.
Yeah.
I mean, he has looked every part the number one over the last year and a half there, in my mind.
Yeah, see, that's what I said. I think he's kind of like 50-50 because I haven't been overly impressed. I mean, I think he's a good receiver, but I just haven't seen that, to me, that true take over a game kind of thing. So I think it would be interesting if he went there because obviously, Pickens would be, probably a little upset. But Russell as it stands, new team, and then next guy on the list is Justin Fields, who is going to back up Wilson to start the season, from what it sounds like.
And both of them are on contract years. They both have 1 year left.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting. I'm guessing if Russell balls out, they may try and sign him to maybe a couple year contract. Yeah. But I'm still a Justin Fields fan.
Yeah,
although Ohio State can't, create a quarterback for the NFL, but I think he's got the tools potentially, and they got him for a 6th rounder, so it's worth it for them.
Yep.
And maybe halfway through the season, 2/3, whatever, he'll get his chance, and maybe he's the guy going forward.
Yeah, because there's a thing in there too that if Well, that's for the Bears, though, right? If
Yeah,
Fields plays
51%.
50 okay, so
Yeah, I don't think. I mean,
yeah,
unless
I could see the Steelers being like, "Oh God, Russell just really sucking these last 3 weeks, but we got to make it
right,
you know,
to not
another
lose.
week."
But
to not
but it's there's
bump it
a,
up to a fourth
and
or
then I
something.
also look back to last year where the Packers could have had a first round draft pick this year from the Jets, but 4 plays in,
Yeah.
down goes.
Yeah,
And I don't wish that on anyone.
Yep.
But it could
Mhm. Yeah.
happen to a Russell, and Justin Fields is forced in.
Yeah. So, I mean, and kind of what I was hearing too, the Steelers are potentially looking for Russell to like mentor Fields.
Yeah.
I mean, I think overall, obviously, Fields is the overall better athlete, but Russell's the better passer for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And Russell, his prime in Seattle was a very good on the move.
His prime in Wisconsin.
Well, yeah,
Wisconsin.
very very
year.
very good at those off balance, running away, scrambling throws,
Right.
or like Fields is really good at, just rushing.
Yeah.
So I think maybe some of it's Pittsburgh's hoping if Fields is open to that Russell, while Russell's a kind of a cornball, can help, maybe kind of work on that part of Fields' game, because
Right.
I think that was the frustration with him in Chicago was, he either held the ball too long or he just ran it. So we'll see. But
although I still he and Kmet had a good connection.
yeah,
And I was surprised by them getting away from some of the things that were working so well.
yeah. I
And-
mean, and DJ Moore had some huge weeks too. I mean, had some, but then could, because of Fields, could have really bad weeks.
But now look. I
yeah,
mean,
you bring in Keenan Allen.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would have taken one more year.
Mhm.
I mean, there's still no reason why they can't move back a couple of spots and still end up with Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, that's what I was like. So I got
And then take a
coworker
Drake
that's
May or someone
yeah.
at 9.
Yeah, I got a coworker that's a Bears fan, and I said you should just the haul of either picks or couple picks and a player potentially from some of these teams would be massive, and bringing in Keenan Allen and all this stuff, and the Bears defense is pretty solid. Has their weaknesses. They got a guy with a loud mouth in that defensive backfield, but the
thing that worries me is now you've got DJ Moore, you've got Keenan Allen, and you are going to go out there with a rookie.
Mhm.
And I mean, let's say that he's as bad as Carolina,
Bryce Young. Mhm.
Or let's say that he gets hurt like Anthony Richardson.
Mhm.
Badgett?
Yeah.
I mean, you just
Back to square one.
you've got realistically, you've got 2 number 1 wide receivers.
Mhm.
And you're going to throw that to a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
It may work out great.
Two number ones, but like I said, I mean, might as well talk about Keenan Allen here. He's old. For NFL wise, he's old.
He had a huge year.
He did have a huge year, but I mean, you want
to throw to someone who is going to catch the ball
Mhm.
and will probably be open. I mean, Keenan Allen was. I mean, he probably won some people their fantasy leagues last year.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, yeah, he's getting older,
Mhm.
but he was still number 1 on the Chargers.
Yeah.
And
Well, my thing is, again, they could trade back, and
well, they can't anymore.
Well, yeah, that's true. They could.
Well, I mean, you still could.
Yeah, and you take whoever.
I mean, they still might get Aduns or it's still looking like they may come away with a wide receiver
Mhm.
to put in for the next. I don't know how long Allen is signed
I don't
for
remember either. But
yeah, I mean, it could be something like that. I just I would have thrown more of my eggs into the basket of, if you've already got Keenan and DJ, keep the quarterback, go out and get a Marvin Harrison, and then, trade back a couple of spots, get Marvin Harrison and let him learn or be the third receiver for a while and see what Fields could do.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I was, like I said, that's what I was with my coworker talking about that. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys do that way. But, you kind of reset your timing with your quarterback when you take Williams because he'll be on his rookie deal. But,
okay,
we'll see how, yeah. I mean, you get yourself, 3 weeks, technically really 3 years because Fields probably had 2 left on his.
They had 1.
So, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, they weren't going to
bit,
sign his, get him for the 5th year.
Yeah. So.
Because the $35 million or whatever it costs for a quarterback, it's not worth the 5th year on him.
Yeah.
But to go with Caleb Williams, it's 4 plus the possible 5th, but you have to do that before the 4th year starts. So or partway through or something.
Yeah, it just the whole Bears kind of rebuild feels like they're doing the right things. I mean, obviously they had just a boatload of money, that they can spend.
Oh, and they were able to keep Sweat and
so I just almost to me feels a little bit like shiny object. I just want something new, and by all means the talent and stuff is there. Should pan out.
I mean, being a Packer fan, I'm fine with what they did.
Yeah.
In a sense, I hope it works because they've gone so long with not a lot. I mean, they've never really had good quarterbacking. And we are definitely the most spoiled franchise in the history of football.
Yep.
So, I hope it works. I just, at the same time, it's not the way I would have done it. And it's not the way you would have done it. And I've talked to people also that they would have preferred to keep Fields for another year, see what he had, and go from there.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, you're at a point now, it's what's the difference? You only got a 6th round draft pick for him.
Yeah, that's true. So I'll pop back in real quick for the QBs. I mean, we kind of brought it up. Sam Darnold. Going to get another chance for
if he's their starter. Games. I mean, it's a huge uptick for Sam Darnold, who didn't really play at all. I would love to be the quarterback walking into that situation.
That's true. Bringing Aaron Jones, who so we'll talk about him a little bit, but when he's healthy, arguably potentially top 5 running back in the league. With his rushing and his passing,
and you've got the best wide receiver. Arguably the best.
Yep.
You have arguably the top 3 tight end.
Third, in my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, he's in that conversation depending upon what you're looking at. I mean, it's different obviously for dynasty than it is for redrafts, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I mean, consistent guy.
Yeah.
So
Sam Darnold, like I said, obviously gets the upgrade because coming from playing, nothing to starting the season. I mean, obviously Minnesota is, pegged as one of those teams. They're looking at the JJ McCarthy, kind of quarterback. So, so we'll see if
hopefully they have to overpay for him.
Yeah. That's true. We'll get back into the wide receivers. I got Calvin Ridley in the Tennessee, which, I think people were, because, it came out that he either wanted to stay in Jacksonville or he was very interested in the Patriots.
Right.
Is what I was hearing. And then to hear Tennessee, and there were all the memes that came out that Tennessee was, a better odds, as a landing spot for Calvin Ridley. So, they're joking that the NFL might need a probe into that. And
if he bet on it.
If there was a
because he was trying to throw the betting the other way by saying he wanted.
Yeah. So if there was a Ralvin Kidley that put a big bet for Calvin Ridley to go to Tennessee.
Well, it might have been Shohei Ohtani's interpreter.
yeah.
We're not quite sure.
That's a whole crazy situation.
Yeah.
But
Ridley started out, or I think it was like one of the first games that he was back last year,
Mhm.
and monster numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God,
Mhm.
Ridley is going to be money.
Yeah.
And then he'd disappear for 2 weeks.
Yep.
Then he'd come back and he'd have a decent game, and then he'd disappear for a week or two.
Yeah, that kind of coincided with the with how Trevor Lawrence played on a given week, and then obviously ETN had his huge games, and
Yep.
like
But he just
struggled at
seemed,
times, but
he seemed to disappear
Yeah.
completely.
Oh yeah, there were games where,
Like he wasn't on the field for a
Mhm.
bunch of plays. Because I watched some of these games, and I'm
Mhm.
thinking, why is he not even on the field?
Yep.
Not let alone having 0 targets.
yeah, I agree.
I mean, I don't know why he would have wanted to stay there with the understanding that there were no targets coming his way a lot of times.
Yeah, which again, why would you stay there, or between the two, if it's Jacksonville and New England? I mean, New England, again, we'll see how Gerard
Jacoby
Mayo, Jacoby Brissett, but we'll see what Gerard Mayo and the team does, with kind of maybe a little bit of a new culture somewhat in the
Right.
draft strategy in New England, because obviously that hasn't been working since Brady left. So, I've been hearing they might stay where they're at. They might trade up, and apparently they're interested in like Drake May, from what I've been hearing a little bit.
Well, what are they going to
so-
trade up to? Number 2?
Yeah, I don't know. So or
From 3 to 2?
that, or they're just going to take a quarterback, whichever one they like there, or they'll trade back if seemingly they like somebody else. I just don't know.
In my mind, you just give again, unless you are fully ready to change everything. And I mean, you went out and got Jacoby Brissett. Give him a chance.
Yeah, well, and I mean, fantasy-wise, so like I'm saying, Calvin Ridley, why would you not go to New England and be the number one?
Yeah.
You go to Tennessee, where he's probably going to be the number one,
Right.
but you still have DeAndre Hopkins there.
Yep.
You got Traylon Burks, who, if the dude can stay on the field, I know he had that nasty concussion, where he, really smacked his head on the sideline there
Thought he
last
was
season.
Batman.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. So,
I'm Batman.
yeah. So, I mean, you would assume going into New England, he'd be the number one,
Right.
and get whatever targets they may be.
Keyshawn Boutte wasn't.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay.
Or Tyquan Thornton, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, ends up in Tennessee. I mean, no Derrick Henry. Not like he was eating into receiving work anyways, but
Right.
it's going to be a kind of a new face for the offense. They brought in Dallas, Tony Pollard.
Yep.
You got Will Levis, presumably the starter.
See, that's the thing. I don't think
Yeah.
they've got a quarterback, so I don't.
Yeah. So I think Calvin Ridley. Yeah. But
Okay.
yeah. So probably, I mean, he was on the Cardinals last year. Obviously, no Kyler. Hollywood Brown, who we're talking about next.
Yep.
No Kyler last season, or at least for the majority of the season. And even when Kyler came back, he wasn't part of it. It was all Trey McBride.
Right.
So, he's going to Kansas City.
Yeah.
Can't really hope for, much better, really.
Yeah.
Just for quarterback pairing.
Well, and I
You
think
know.
I think he's slated to be the replacement for MVS.
Yeah, which is an upgrade for the team.
Oh yeah, I mean he's not going to drop all the balls that MVS drops. He's the speed, he's the over the top speed and,
Mhm.
and everything, and he potentially could get a lot more playing time than one might have expected with
Yeah.
Rashee Rice going through his own
Yeah.
trials and
Speeding
tribulations. He
crashing
has a
Ferrari or whatever it was.
he now has a
And then-
$1 million lawsuit against him. liability lawsuit.
So
two
it'll be
people that got
it'll be
injured.
interesting to see what the NFL. I mean, normally kind of been the NFL's move to wait until all the legal stuff actually there's a conclusion to that, and then the NFL will come in and be like, all right, you're done for 3 weeks or whatever.
I would be surprised if he's not gone for a minimum of 6.
Yeah. So,
to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've been cracking down on.
You're driving 100 and what? How fast was he going?
I don't know. It was in a Ferrari.
135 or 150 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he owned both, or he leased both of the vehicles, and it.
And
I mean, it's great that he stepped up. Huh?
Well, did it take like a week or so? Like they couldn't find him or couldn't get a hold of him, and so.
But he said that he'll take care of all the costs and everything, and I mean that's cool. But and people say, well, haven't you ever driven a car fast? And I have. I've driven very fast. Not quite that fast, but almost.
Yeah.
But I did it at night with nobody on the road.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't doing it downtown Austin, going through in the middle of the rush hour traffic or whatever it was. In my mind, that's just dumb.
Yeah. So I think, with that, and then, obviously Travis Kelce's, I think as long as he can get out on the field, is always going to be Mahomes' number one.
Right.
But, obviously, like I said, if Rice misses 6 weeks, maybe not hot take, maybe a little bit, but I think Hollywood, if he can show what he was in Baltimore, should comfortably put him in the top 15.
Yeah.
Easily, in my mind, for wide receivers.
Yeah.
I
don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I top 25 maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to remember that there are still a lot of guys out there who are much better than Hollywood.
True. I'm just going with potential situations
that are coming out of the top
Mahomes.
10 that are still better
well,
than
yes. I'm just, like I said, I'm just looking Mahomes and the potential situation if Rice is not there.
Yeah.
That the amount of, looks that he could get, as long as they connect, which shouldn't be a problem because he's not MVS.
Yep.
Agreed. Should translate. So
who's next?
The big one, and that everybody
that's in his mind.
Yeah, but I mean, when it came out, everybody was, at least from what I saw, everybody was like, "Oh man," But it's Stephon Diggs,
31 million in dead cap space.
Yeah,
for a guy who,
the Bills are eating. Are they eating this? Aren't the Bills eating some?
Yeah, the Bills are eating 31 million.
And then the Texans
redid
it, paid him essentially what he's owed for the rest or whatever.
Probably the rest of the guaranteed, and gave him a 1-year contract.
So then next year he can either, if he wants, would probably have to be a team-friendly deal, or he can go out and try and find another, 2-3 years somewhere else.
Yeah. But, I mean, his attitude will probably turn a lot of teams off. I mean, this is a good move for the Texans, especially with Tank coming off of the broken leg.
Yep.
I think that he has value, but CJ Stroud had so many different guys that he was able to find and throw to.
Noah Brown with monster games.
Diggs is going to probably be his whiny old self.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's what I said. In my notes here, again, somewhat messy. Not as bad as Minnesota, but we heard the grumblings. Was it even before the season? There were apparently some things going around, or a couple weeks in, there was some stuff, or apparently said something in the locker room, or there was something going around, and then there were some speculations that maybe he'd get moved, in the middle of the season, and that there was some contention between him and Josh Allen, coupled with the offensive coordinator, change. That's right when Diggs started to really slow down at the end of the last half of the season, because he came out again in the beginning and was
I was going to say he disappeared the year before too.
Yeah, so. Same thing. He was white hot for like 3/4 of the season last year, or the year before that, and then disappeared. And this year it was more like half the season he disappeared. So
yep.
So I think again, I think, just for those guys, I think Diggs and Nico are going to be competing for targets there.
Right.
I think Tank, as long as he comes back, takes his time, make sure he's fully healthy coming back. I think he's pretty secure
Right.
in his role, which I don't know what it is. I just love Tank Dell watching him. And granted, I had picked him up, so that was always nice too. But
and I'm stuck with that CJ Stroud guy because I had to take him because someone took JSN right in front of me. So
yeah, you're welcome. Might be sitting on JSN for a little while before I get any real true value out of that pick.
Yeah, luckily CJ has turned into an immediate stud for me.
Yep. So we'll move on to the running backs. Again, couple, quite a few, big names, moving.
Well, an early on movement. I mean, you had, 2 big moves the first day.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll start, probably the biggest is Saquon, getting out of New York and having to carry an entire franchise and all of their crappy, bad attitude fans.
I was just going to say, when it comes to sports,
mm-hmm.
New York has got to be the worst place to play.
Yeah, that's what when with Aaron, Rodgers.
Right.
Well, that's what we were saying is that
fans are right. Fans are brutal,
mm-hmm.
brutal, and I mean, I didn't think Aaron Rodgers would be able to deal with that. But apparently he can't, he doesn't see past his own supremacy to actually notice that people may not like him at times. So, I mean, he was potentially going to be our vice president to
RFK.
Yeah. If he won. So,
just massive upgrade offensively across the board for Philly. I mean, granted, you lose arguably the best center, probably the best center in the game, at the time was, obviously Jason Kelce.
Oh, I thought you were talking Creed Humphrey.
Yeah. You lose Jason Kelce, obviously is, the anchor to that line, but still.
It'll be interesting though, because you know how many times he pulled, etc.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if they can still do some of the stuff as well. It's that funny thing about, well, we're going to plug this guy into a system that has been working great, but we're going to take out the main cog from that, and we're going to see how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And if Saquon doesn't do Saquon things, it's going to be seen as Saquon stinks.
Yeah.
And I don't like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like Danny Dimes in New York.
Yeah.
He was generally running for his life. Does that make him a bad quarterback?
No.
I don't think so.
That's why it was fantasy relevant.
Right.
A lot of the times because he had to rush.
Right. I mean, I played in a league where they actually penalized you for your quarterback getting sacked. And I'm like, how do you penalize a quarterback for getting sacked? It's not his fault that the offensive line can't block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Saquon, it just depends on how things work out.
Yep. Yeah. Like I said, we'll see when they get down in that goal line, that 2 yard, 1 yard.
Well, they're leaving the tush push in. So I think he's still getting, I think Hurts is still going to get those.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, in my notes, I said, honestly, if Philly was smart, I think they would try and protect Hurts a little bit more, and maybe
you'd think so.
Maybe 7 out of the 10 times they get down to the one they hand it off.
Do you remember when Mahomes got injured running a short one?
Yeah, was that ankle like beginning in the playoffs or in
a couple
playoffs?
Years ago or so?
Yeah.
And they probably thought, what were we thinking?
Mm-hmm.
And you watch some of these guys and you say, you have to protect your quarterback.
Look at Carson Wentz in Philly. When he ran that one in, and blew his knee up, he was never the same after that. Obviously because that's when Nick Foles came in and won them that ring. So, but yeah, Saquon. I mean, Yeah, you look at DeAndre Swift at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Was a monster.
Right.
If they can, and I think Saquon's probably better than
who,
DeAndre Swift.
Who the year before? Who was their running back? I can't think of his.
Wow, yeah,
I'm drawing a blank, but he was putting up good numbers there.
Yeah.
And then I was surprised that they took a flyer on Swift last year, and
they brought in Rashad Penny, who he didn't play like at all. But
Rashad Penny, I always expect nothing out of Rashad Penny.
Yeah, so unless he was the 1 year on Seattle. But next up, Derrick Henry going to Baltimore. There were some rumblings that might have ended up in Dallas, but I think Baltimore had him pegged like 2 years ago when they knew his contract was.
I like that for him.
I do too. In my notes, I just said he's going to be, at this point in his career, I think he's going to be Gus Edwards, just twice as big,
right?
And might score twice as many touchdowns.
And
I think insane.
I think he's a better running back. Well, I mean, even at this age, obviously he's a better running back.
Yeah. Well, even in the middle of the field, you looked at. Granted, they still have Keaton Mitchell. I know he got hurt.
He did.
But
I think that was an ACL, wasn't it?
Yeah, so if he comes back, late in the season or whatever, I don't know what his time frame is, but
I would guess he'd be back.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Speed guy, but teams weren't worried about Gus Edwards or Justice Hill in between the 20s.
Right.
You're always worried about Derrick Henry, even at this point in his career.
Right.
Where. He could break, potentially maybe not an 80-yarder anymore, but, he's going to break off chunk plays.
Right.
Especially when you have tied with, is Lamar going to pull?
Right. Yeah. And that's what I was thinking. You sit there and normally your quarterback, he's just handing it to Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And Derrick Henry's getting the
Ryan
ball.
Tannehill's not going to pull it and run for scrambles.
So now all of a sudden you've got Lamar. And so that guy's got to stay home.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's got to stay home. And, now you don't know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It opens up the middle of the field a little bit more. I actually think he could do very well.
Yeah, I agree. And
as long as Lamar gives him the ball.
That's true. It's kind of the Saquon with Hurts situation.
Right.
Where, I think Henry will get, like I said, Gus Edwards had double-digit touchdowns because they would get to the 3-yard line and they would just hand it off because
and he'd fall down.
In that part, they're trying to protect Lamar.
Right.
I think Henry's going to, obviously, he's going to get all of those
right.
because he's, a massive human
250 pounds.
Yeah. Did you see the picture he was training with Braylon Allen? Braylon Allen went and trained with Derrick Henry, and there's a picture. There's like Braylon Allen, another dude, and Derrick Henry. And Braylon Allen, for as young as he is a big dude.
Yeah, he's 240 or so pounds.
Just massive. He looked tiny compared to Derrick Henry.
Well, look at the picture that they had last year or 2 years ago of Quadzilla and Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones looked like a sprite next to him.
$140 soaking wet.
Yeah. When you stand next to someone who weighs 250 some pounds and has quads that are the size of my upper body.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you expect?
Yeah, so I agree. I think, Derrick Henry was,
I like
obviously disappointing last season.
I don't think he'll be top 5, but I think he'll be top 10.
Yeah, like if you can get him as even your second running back, or if you get him as a flex, in fantasy, I think, in redraft at least, I think you'll be very, very happy. So, next up, I got Joe Mixon. I know, was he technically traded?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So going to Houston, I that day had predicted that Mixon was actually going to go to Dallas because the Henry news had already come out. So I picked the wrong Texas team.
Yeah,
but
I actually like him there.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I do and I don't. Yeah. I had Singletary. Singletary went to
Chicago. Did he end up in Chicago?
No.
Chicago brought in a running back, I thought.
Carolina?
Maybe.
And I've got who's their other? Who was the guy they drafted 2 years ago?
Dameon Pierce.
Dameon Pierce. So it kind of makes me unhappy that I'm losing, Singletary will get the carries in. Where'd he go?
Giants.
Oh yeah. So
Giants.
he's their Giants. So he's the Giants running back. So he's a starter there, and well, at least a partial starter. I was hoping that Pierce would regain his role, but with Mixon there, he's not going to.
Yeah.
But Mixon, good opportunity, great opportunity.
Yeah.
Especially if the defense plays better. They've got so many weapons out there that he may see a lot of running.
And Mixon's good out of the backfield too in the receiving role.
Yes.
You get, say you go 3 wide with Diggs, Nico, and Tank, and then, and they still have Dalton Schultz, at tight end, who's no slouch,
right.
And then you got Mixon, squirting out of the backfield, so yeah. But with what Houston's doing, do you worry there's so many mouths to feed? I mean, maybe not in the running back role, obviously, but, are they going to be, is it going to be like Philly where they're just too efficient and one game it's
Maybe.
A.J. Brown for 40 points and then the next game it's Devonta Smith for 30, could be, we'll see. But, I think in the running back role.
Yeah, there are 2 people I want from that offense.
Stroud and Mixon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stroud and Mixon.
Yeah.
I don't
personally, I'll settle for Tank Dell.
and that's great,
yeah.
but you don't know what kind of week he's going to have.
Exactly.
It's like going into this season and saying, which Packer wide receiver do you want?
So I was listening to another podcast, and that was their first question, another fantasy one. And, it was, you can make an argument for any of them.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, my top would probably be Jaden Reed.
Yeah. So that's normally, Jaden Reed, I think, but when healthy, if he can stay healthy, obviously the tangibles and the athleticism is Christian Watson.
Yeah.
But
and supposedly he's gotten some of the hamstring issues figured out.
Yeah.
But
you still got
Dontavian Wicks.
You still got Dobbs, Dontavian Wicks,
Bo Melton.
Yeah.
Malik Heath. I mean, none of them are. I don't put them in the same. But what I'm saying is, how do you choose? I'll take Jordan Love.
Oh yeah.
I'll take Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
But I mean, even with the tight ends, who's the better tight end? You don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, until Musgrave got hurt, Kraft looked horrible.
Yeah.
In fact, he was missing blocks, etc. And a game or 2 into his stint, he looked like the man.
Yeah.
So it's interesting on any of these teams. I'll take the quarterback and I'll take the running back for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. Moving on, like we were just talking about a little bit ago, Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
Green Bay's really, I think we're really committing to the youngest roster in the league, ideal.
Yeah.
Or at least starting there.
Right.
And trying to retain your core.
Yep.
At least to the most part. Obviously, Jacobs is 28. Technically probably in the prime.
No, he's 27.
26.
Isn't he 26? I think he's 26.
I don't know where I got 28 from then, but so in the prime of his career, obviously he struggled last year.
Now, one of the problems is that he's got as many carries as Aaron Jones did.
Yes.
And Aaron Jones is like 3 years older than he is. So the fact that in 3 additional seasons, he's touched the ball 3 fewer seasons, he's touched the ball that many, carried the ball that many times.
Yeah, he's got some mileage.
Yeah.
So
scares me a little bit, but I prefer going younger.
Yep.
I love Aaron Jones. Yeah. Aaron Jones is one of the classiest guys ever.
Yeah. He'll go down in that, when people are like, oh, who's your favorite Green Bay Packer? You obviously get like mine personally, Donald Driver.
And your wife, Jordy Nelson. And rightly so with a lot of those guys.
Yeah, and I think Jones he's in that conversation.
Yeah,
but,
you know who mine is? John Brockington. You don't even know who John Brockington is.
No. I do know that your wife's is Al Harris.
Al Harris.
Oh. Anyways, back to Josh Jacobs. Was it 2 years ago, leading rusher?
Yeah.
Was that 2 years ago?
Yep.
And looked, so good that season.
Right.
Obviously,
and last year there was quarterback.
Yeah, quarterback issues. That offense was a mess. You get the was it that the coaching stuff with,
Yep.
partway through or at the beginning, not too far
halfway-ish,
into the season.
yeah.
So, I lean, give the benefit of the doubt to Jacobs on that. You got a team with, at times no direction. They don't know what they're doing, but I think, last year, Green Bay, obviously, Jordan Love, I think, surprised pretty much everybody who wasn't a Packers fan with
and at least half of the Packer fans.
Well, yes.
I mean, because most of them, or a lot of them, sat there and said, why would you trade arguably one of the best quarterbacks of all time and take a chance on this guy that some idiot called Gutekunst took in the first round, traded up to take in the first round when you didn't need a quarterback. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
When you draft when you don't need a quarterback.
Well, that's how I was at the time, because that pick, when they traded up, could have translated into T. Higgins.
Okay.
But again, hindsight.
You look at all the trades, and I mean, you probably don't even know about this one. You ever hear of Barry Sanders?
Yeah.
Do you know what happened with Barry Sanders? Barry Sanders was drafted 3rd. The Packers went with someone by the name of Tony Mandarich.
That was that draft. Yeah, I do know about that.
So
roided it out.
Yeah,
or whatever,
yeah, and he was
Michigan.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Michigan State.
Michigan, was it State?
Yeah. Brandon White.
Okay.
And those types of the Packers taking who's our center? Drawing a blank. Right before Creed Humphrey was drafted.
Yeah.
There are always going to be those.
Not Runyon, is it?
No. Runyon's gone.
Yeah.
I'm just drawing a blank on his name.
I can't. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. So yet again, when we get Packers talk, we just start shooting off. But
geeking out.
Yeah. So like you're saying, with just how efficient and explosive the Green Bay offense can be at times, seemed like the majority of the time last season. I think just the upgrade in the offense, kind of like the Saquon thing, you just across the board upgrading the offense should benefit Jacobs really well. And Jacobs, I think, Aaron Jones, obviously, we're going to talk about next, so we'll just kind of, slide right in there. But, excellent pass catching back, Aaron Jones. Josh Jacobs isn't that far behind him in that term.
Right.
It's just he wasn't really utilized like that in
and I think you'll
Vegas.
see back to schemes. If you're in the right system and the scheme is such that we throw a lot of screens, he's going to be the beneficiary of a bunch of those.
Yep. So like I said, tying right into Aaron Jones.
So I will change my mind on this. Yeah. I normally say that I won't take wide receivers. I'll take the running back and the quarterback. I'll take the running back. I won't take the quarterback for Minnesota.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, obviously as Packers fans, like we talked about, one of the, most loved in, somewhat recent memory, most loved, players, and a guy who took a couple pay cuts and just kind of said no this time. And, team had to make
rightly
a decision.
so.
Yeah,
rightly
yeah.
so.
Oh, I totally agree.
I mean, I would have loved to have seen that two-headed monster.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been.
Yeah, that would have been stupid.
That would have been crazy.
Yeah.
But and then again, kind of team friendly, but what he's worth. We get AJ Dillon on league minimum.
Yep.
So, but Aaron Jones going to Minnesota, he's going to be the guy. Ty Chandler is still working there.
And I like him.
Yeah.
But who is the guy that Madison? He went somewhere else.
He's in Vegas right now too, I think. So,
and he won't start there. So
that could be.
No, he won't start there.
I think he'll end up being a committee.
Yeah,
I think it will. But anyways, Aaron Jones, like I said, when he's healthy, top 5 in my opinion in the league. Like I said, maybe a touch small for a running back, but dude's tough as nails. Minus the big things.
Did you write that down for us to say tough as nails at the same time?
Again, just great pass catching back, great in open space, fast. As painful as it's going to be seeing him in purple, Maybe not as much so as Brett Favre, but it's going to hurt. I think for Minnesota was a great move because they were sick of Madison because, he always looked good whenever Dalvin Cook was, out for a game, and then said, all right, Cook, you're out. We'll roll with Madison, and he let him down for, the most part. So,
right. So let's shoot through the other couple of free agents you've got.
Yeah, I got J.K. Dobbins, kind of the top one. I think with the injuries, because he's had big injuries.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him.
I do too.
I mean, he's had horrible injuries that have completely derailed. I mean, he could have been a very good back.
Yeah, when he was healthy. I mean, he had he had some big games when he's healthy, and then the injuries. So I think teams are going to be looking at him as a compliment, or you got 2 1B type running backs. He's going to be in that kind of committee.
Oh, you got it. Yeah, I mean, there's someone who's going to take a chance on him because of the fact that he has the ability. It's just, can he stay healthy? Yeah,
and I don't think, I don't know what kind of contract he might be looking for. I think it's going to end up probably being like I mentioned Dalvin Cook a little bit ago. I think it's going to be like that, where Dalvin wants, $12 million a year. He might get 8, or whatever, 6, whatever Dalvin got because of those injuries.
I think he got 7.
Yeah, and like I said, in my notes here, I said, to me, Buffalo comes to mind as, I mean, don't get me wrong, James Cook is good.
Yeah.
But, just a compliment.
He seems a little undersized at times.
And he is. He is a little small. So I think a good compliment and somebody, too, that, can help maybe take some of the rushing pressure off of Josh Allen, too, just for longevity's sake. So next up, I got Tyler Boyd. Not many teams come to mind that might use. He'll end up somewhere because he's just a solid, veteran receiver. But I think we had mentioned that Higgins, had requested to be traded. Whether the Bengals do that in the draft to package and would be insane. There's been insane rumors that they would send Higgins and whatever over to Minnesota to get. It's not going to happen, but to get Justin Jefferson to pair with Jamar Chase, that would be crazy. But
and how are you going to pay both of them?
I know, that's what I'm just saying.
Along with
it's just
your quarterback.
That's been it's just been out there, and it would be crazy if it could even happen. But
it can't.
I think Higgins.
You're not playing Madden football.
I know, but if they move him during the draft or after, I think since he's going to be drafted
now in Dynasty, maybe you can do that.
Yes,
but you're not going to see it in the real world.
That's for sure.
So,
but I think since he's going to be looking at wide receiver at some point here in the draft, whether it's later like there's a Mitchell out of Texas, one of the 2 Texas receivers, those super fast guys. Somebody like that. There's a guy out of Franklin out of like.
You're talking Worthy?
Yeah, or Worthy, whichever one.
Worthy is the 4-2-0.
Well, the other one ran like a 4-3. Like
that's pedestrian compared to Worthy.
Well, yeah. But I think if Higgins gets traded, it makes the most sense to me that Boyd would just stay in Cincy.
Yeah, I would agree.
I put in OBJ. Just he's old and washed. And
then the potential for an Ayuk trade.
Like we talked about.
Pittsburgh apparently has been linked to them to a link to him.
Interest,
right. That doesn't mean
sense.
Oh yeah. It would make a lot of sense. But like I said earlier, I would hold on to both of those guys, and I'd say, who is of more value going forward after this year? And I think it's definitely Ayuk over Debo.
Yeah.
So, but that's me.
Totally agree.
So that's all we've got for this week. In a few weeks, we will talk about the follow-up after the draft. See where some of those players go. Give you some ideas on who we like, who we don't like based on where they were drafted.
Yeah.
So until then, I am Ozzy.
I'm Austin.
Have a great day.
See you later.